Today's topic is toxic substances, and we'll discuss how to measure toxic effect. Toxic substances surround us almost everywhere. You find them in almost everything. Pesticides on our fruits and vegetables, chemicals in our cosmetics and pharmacy, gasoline used to fuel automobiles, and finally caffeine in your cup of tea or glass of cola. It's all about toxic substances. The word toxic means poisonous. Different chemicals produce different toxic effect. It may be a minor allergic reaction, but maybe much more serious acute condition, including death. So it is extremely important for humans to know more about this. One way to measure toxicity is to determine how much of chemical is required to produce certain toxic effect on people or cause death. Of course, we are not going to test humans on toxic substances to see how they are affected by poisons, but we can check on animals, rats or mice. Poor rats. Rats are used most frequently, by the way, because their body response to things is almost identical to humans' response. Any chemical in general can be toxic if you eat, drink or absorb too much of it. The perfect example is, for example, vitamin D, which is an important nutrient, but at the same time, it is also a highly toxic chemical. To measure chemicals' toxicity, scientists carry out so-called dose-response study. Now, dose is the amount of chemicals that enters the body of certain organism. It may happen by eating, inhaling, or absorbing. Classical test experiment can use 100 or more lab animals, which are divided into equal size groups, let's say 10 animals in each group. Then increasing doses of toxin are given to these animal groups, after which mortalities are recorded within a given period of time. In other words, we just count number of animals that died after taking of toxic substances. The results are plotted usually on the graphs. Y-axis is percent of species died from a given dose of chemicals, and x-axis contains increasing doses of chemical measured in milligrams per kilogram of body weight. Again, milligram comes from the toxin and kilogram comes from the body mass. In general, such graphs demonstrate deadly impact of certain chemical on a given species. One of the examples can be given is curve for pesticide on mice. Pesticides are used in agriculture to kill different insects or pests like mosquitoes, cockroaches, locusts. Now, in this particular case, pesticides are used against mice. On x-axis, we see the increasing dose of chemicals. In this case, it's pesticides. On y-axis, we register percent of mice died. Now, the curve looks like this. From this curve, we see that at low dose of pesticide, about up to until about 70 milligrams per kilogram, no mice die. But increasing further this dose, we observe more and more mice are dying after taking a toxic substance. And finally, at about 100 milligrams per kilogram of mice body, we see that 100% of mice dying. To find very important value called LD50, which is lethal dose 50, we need to do the following. We find 50 on Y scale and draw a line parallel to x-axis until intersection with a graph. From this intersection point, we draw perpendicular line on x-axis, and the result will be can be read on x-axis. In this case, it's 85 milligrams per kilogram of mice. This amount is representing LD50 value. So again, lethal dose 50 is the quantity of the chemical which is fatal to 50% of the organisms tested. In this case, mice which got this 85 milligrams per kilogram, 50% of those mice were killed by pesticide. So if you feed certain amount of chemicals to whole population of organisms, 50% of them would die. Famous European scientist Paracelsus, who was founder of toxicology, made such statement: all substances on our planet are poisons, and it is the dose that makes